Alone, she walked through the dark gates of Wreath Fortress, where everyone who had ventured before had met only failure. No weapons, no army, just a backpack and an unshakable belief that the flesh-eating empire could not resist the most sacred instinct: protecting their young. The holographic news screens flickered across the Galactic Concord's central plaza. 50 adolescents from 8 species had been aboard the cultural exchange vessel when its engines failed, sending it drifting into Vrethar space. The Vrethar government had generously taken them to their moon fortress for academic maintenance. That was 3 standard days ago. No communication since. Mara Delson stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Mediation Council, her slight frame almost lost among the imposing delegates. As the newest Terran representative, her position was modest: a developmental psychologist specializing in cross-species childhood psychology, but her reputation for reading children's minds was unparalleled. "The Vrethar have taken our children hostage," thundered Ariella Nant, the Altaran representative, her tall, antelope-like form quivering with outrage. "They've effectively declared war on 8 civilizations simultaneously." Commander Korsul of the Zirian military contingent nodded grimly. 3 rescue operations have already failed. Their defense systems are impenetrable. We lost 6 scout ships just attempting reconnaissance. The room erupted into overlapping arguments. Military strike, diplomatic ultimatum, economic sanctions, each suggestion more desperate than the last. The Vrethar had helpfully transmitted detailed schematics of their defenses, an implicit challenge that screamed, "Try us." In the midst of the chaos, Mara raised her hand. The council president, a wizened Lularian with translucent skin, noticed and called for silence. "I request permission to visit the fortress," Mara said simply. Laughter rippled across the chamber. "Alone?" Ariella Nant's voice dripped with condescension. "What will you do, Terran? Reason with apex predators?" Mara met her gaze steadily. "I'll visit the children." More laughter, but the council president studied her curiously. "And what makes you think they'll allow you inside when they've repelled military forces?" "Because I won't be a threat," Mara replied. "Just a caretaker checking on the children." Commander Korsul snorted. "Nothing more than a small girl in hiking sandals, walking into the predator's den." The president sighed. "The council cannot officially sanction such a mission. It would be suicide." "I'm not asking for sanction," Mara said quietly. "Just permission to try." While the military strategists spent weeks developing elaborate infiltration plans, Mara prepared in her own way. Her backpack contained children's picture books from all 8 species, snacks suited to each metabolism, and detailed psychological profiles of all 50 adolescents. No weapons, no sophisticated communication devices, nothing that could be construed as espionage equipment. She secured passage on a civilian cargo hauler piloted by Kavir Laurent, an aging Centauri with a reputation for surviving the Rim's dangers. His vessel, the Wayward Comet, was battered but reliable, the perfect, unremarkable transport. "You understand this is essentially a one-way trip?" Kavir asked, as they accelerated away from the council station. His weathered face creased with concern. "The Vrethar don't exactly welcome visitors." Mara nodded, studying diagrams of sleep positions preferred by Vrethar children. "I understand the risks." "Mind telling me why you're doing this? There are professional negotiators, military rescue teams." "Who've all failed," Mara finished, "because they approached it as a hostage situation." "And it isn't?" She looked up, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Not to the children. To them. It's just another adventure. And to the Vrethar children among them, it's home." Kavir frowned. "You're betting your life on what? Parental instinct. These are apex predators. Their entire culture revolves around dominance and consumption." "Even apex predators protect their young," Mara said simply, returning to her studies. The fortress moon loomed before them 3 days later, a cratered satellite encircled by defense platforms. dominated by the vast obsidian spires of the fortress itself. Green plasma nets crackled between orbiting satellites, while automated defense turrets tracked their approach. The communication channels emitted only occasional growls and strange laughter, the Vrethar equivalent of military chatter. "Last chance to reconsider," Kavir said as they approached the designated landing pad, a stark platform jutting from the moon's gray surface. Mara shouldered her backpack. "Wait 3 days. If I haven't returned or sent word, leave." "And if you do need extraction?" She handed him a small transponder. "This will activate only if I'm outside the fortress with the children. Don't come for me alone." The airlock hissed open, revealing the dusty lunar surface. Mara stepped out, her regulation boots crunching on the regolith. The fortress towered above her, sharp spires of black metal reaching toward the stars, pulsing with eerie green lights. The air tasted metallic through her breather mask, tinged with unfamiliar compounds. 3 massive figures awaited her at the base of the entry ramp. Vrethar warriors, nearly 3 meters tall, with gleaming obsidian scales, covering powerful, reptilian bodies. Their bioarmor pulsed with living circuitry, and their eyes glowed red in the dim light. Predator's eyes. "Human," the central figure growled, mandibles clicking with each syllable. "You dare approach alone?" Mara met the warrior's gaze. "I've come to visit the children." The Vrethar exchanged glances, mandibles twitching in what might have been amusement. "Follow," the leader commanded, turning toward the fortress entrance. The corridors within were a testament to conquest. Walls adorned with trophies from defeated enemies, ambient lighting that pulsed like a heartbeat, and perpetual dripping water that echoed ominously, a reminder of the fate of the vanquished. Guard stations housed hundreds of trap mechanisms disguised as architectural features, columns concealing plasma emitters, floor panels hiding pressure sensors. At one checkpoint, Mara calmly reached into her backpack and produced a QR code printed on what looked like a child's seat assignment tag. Bilingual in Terran and Vrethar script. The guards scanned it, consulted frantically among themselves, then fell silent and waved her forward. "What was that?" one guard demanded. "Standard cross-species childcare certification," Mara replied evenly. "Required for all cultural exchange programs." After nearly an hour of winding through increasingly secure sections, they arrived at a massive doorway, labeled in multiple languages. The nursery. The doors slid open, revealing a vast chamber with cathedral-high ceilings and warm, amber light, simulating sunset streaming through dome-shaped apertures. The floor was covered with plush materials, and furnishings, beds, tables, chairs, were all Vrethar-sized, enormous by human standards. But what caught Mara's breath was the sight of children from 7 species playing together in mixed groups. Terran adolescents building structures alongside spindly Quellians. Alteran youth engaged in a modified tag game with furry Akrith children. And most surprisingly, young Vrethar, smaller versions of the adults but no less intimidating, participating fully in the activities. "They seem happy," Mara observed to her escort. The warrior's expression was unreadable. "The matriarch wishes to see you. Now." They led her deeper into the fortress, through increasingly ornate passages, until they reached a throne room carved from a single, massive asteroid fragment. Seated upon a raised dais of polished stone was matriarch Ira Vreth, ancient by Vrethar standards, her scales silvered with age, but no less imposing. Her bioarmor pulsed with authority, and her eyes held the wisdom of centuries. "Little granddaughter." The matriarch's voice reverberated through the chamber, the translation matrix barely keeping up with the complex harmonics. "What prey walks willingly into the tiger's lair?" Mara stood her ground. "I've come about the children." "The hostages," Matriarch Ira corrected, mandibles clicking in what might have been a smile. "Leverage to force the Quellian Confederation to surrender their claims to the Beta Nebula." They look well cared for, Mara said, pulling a data tablet from her pack. I've come to identify their proper caretakers. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. You presume much human. May I see them again, to assess their condition? Something flickered across the ancient Vrethar's face. Hesitation, curiosity, before she nodded once. Come. They returned to the nursery, where the matriarch stood silently, watching the intermingled groups of children. A young Vrethar, barely a third the matriarch's size but already formidable, broke away from a game to approach. Several other species followed. Matriarch Mother, the young Vrethar said respectfully, then turned to the others. This is my parent leader. A Terran girl, no more than 13, looked up at the towering figure. Your mom makes the best snacks. She showed us how to prepare tharka root. An Alteran boy nodded enthusiastically. And she tells the most frightening bedtime stories. Mara watched carefully as emotions warred across the matriarch's face. Confusion, conflict, and something deeper, something that seemed to shake her very foundations. They should fear us, Ira whispered, so low that only Mara's translator caught it. They are prey species. Children know no species boundaries, Mara replied quietly. Only care and connection. The matriarch's eyes locked onto hers. You knew this would happen. I hoped, Mara admitted. The instinct to protect the young transcends evolutionary history. Even apex predators cherish their children. They are hostages, Ira insisted, but her voice wavered. Political instruments. Look at them. Mara gestured toward where a young Vrethar was carefully helping a smaller Akrith child climb a play structure. Your children don't see hostages. They see friends. The matriarch's eyes tracked the interaction, and to Mara's astonishment, moisture gathered at their corners, the Vrethar equivalent of tears. They were to be bargaining chips, Ira said, her voice dropping to a rumble. They were meant to demonstrate our dominance, our position at the top of the galactic food chain. And instead, my spawn asks for Terran bedtime stories. Instead, they learn Quellian songs. The matriarch's massive hands clenched. They should be learning to hunt, to dominate. They're learning something more valuable, Mara ventured. They're learning to connect. A young Vrethar approached the matriarch, tugging at her ceremonial robe. Mother, will you stroke my back ridges before sleep? And Kiri's too? He pointed to a tiny Tashari child, hovering nearby. Mara watched as something profound shifted in the ancient predator's posture. The matriarch knelt, a gesture of vulnerability Mara suspected few had ever witnessed, and gently ran a clawed finger along the child's dorsal spines. Tyrannical children, no matter how large, are still children, Mara said softly. When they feel safe together, they maintain the shape of parenthood, transcending hunting instincts. You've proven that by caring for them. More children gathered around, from all 8 species, voices overlapping. Matriarch Mother, will you tell us a story? Can you show us the star map again? Will you make the growing sound that helps us sleep? The matriarch looked up at Mara, mandibles quivering slightly. Strength is not cruelty, she said, as if testing a new concept. Strength is protection. The strongest protection is love, Mara replied simply. Later that evening, in a private chamber, the matriarch made her decision. The children will be returned, without conditions, she announced. Each will receive a token, a fragment of fortress stone, to remember their time here. Mara bowed her head. The council will be grateful. I do not do this for your council, Ira snapped, then softened. I do this because my children have chosen their path. They see beyond our ancient ways. Perhaps there is wisdom in their vision. The following day, Mara organized a farewell gathering in the common area. Children exchanged gifts, drew pictures for their Vrethar caretakers, and made promises to meet again on Terra. Xeria, Quella, and other worlds. When the Lularian diplomatic vessel, summoned urgently, arrived at the fortress, the ambassador found not a hostage situation, but what appeared to be an interspecies summer camp. Children from 8 worlds, playing and learning together under the watchful eyes of Rethar guardians, who seemed more like doting parents than fearsome warriors. The ambassador's mandibles clicked rapidly in confusion. I don't understand, he stammered to Mara. We were told there was a hostage crisis. There was a misunderstanding, Mara replied simply. The children were never in danger. At the Galactic Council Center, 3 days later, the reunion scene brought tears to many eyes. Parents from 8 worlds watched as Vrethar warriors, traditionally seen with spears and fighting stances, gently helped each child disembark from the transport vessels. Reporters captured the moment when a massive Vrethar guard knelt to tie the shoelace of a tiny Terran girl. His deadly claws, managing the delicate task with surprising gentleness. The long-term impact was more profound than anyone could have predicted. Within months, the Vrethar had registered their own children for educational exchanges on 8 different planets. Vrethar families became mini ambassadors for peace efforts, significantly easing tensions in the Outer Rim. Mara Delson received the Galactic Excellence Medal, one who broke walls of war with maternal love. But the ceremony paled compared to the sight of children from once enemy species playing together in the Council Plaza. The next generation continued to mingle and learn from each other, bringing greater peace to the galactic community. Yet the silhouette of the Vrethar Fortress moon remained, a reminder that even the most fearsome predators would always prioritize protecting their young. Months later, Mara sat in her office reviewing applications for the expanded cross-species childcare program. A message notification blinked on her screen, from matriarch Irea. The children ask when you will visit again. It read simply. Mara smiled. The universe was vast and filled with dangers, but some instincts, like the desire to nurture the young, truly were universal. She began typing her reply. Soon, there are many more bedtime stories to share. At the next council session, when discussions turned to territorial disputes along the Rim, Ariella Nant turned to Mara. Your approach was unorthodox, the Alteran admitted, but effective. Commander Korsul nodded grudgingly. Sometimes the smallest warriors achieve what armies cannot. Mara shook her head. I wasn't a warrior, just someone who believed in the power of connection. That evening, she joined a video call connecting children from all 8 species, now back on their homeworlds, but still maintaining their friendships. As they chattered excitedly about their days, sharing stories across light years, she watched the future of the galaxy taking shape, not through treaties or military might, but through the bonds formed in childhood. The Vrethar Fortress moon still orbited its planet, plasma defenses still active, a reminder of the species' fearsome heritage. But now regular shuttles carried children to and from its surface, turning the former symbol of domination into a center for cultural exchange. And in the V-nursery, young Vrethar learned alongside children from across the galaxy, their differences celebrated rather than feared. The most powerful weapon in the universe, it seemed, wasn't plasma cannons or battle fleets, but the simple, universal instinct to protect and nurture the young. Kavir Laurent found Mara in the observation deck of the council station, watching distant stars. I hear you're planning another trip to the fortress, he said, leaning against the railing beside her. She nodded. The matriarch has requested my input on their new cross-species education program. The old pilot chuckled. From hostage takers to running a galactic preschool. Who would have thought? Anyone who's ever watched children play together, Mara replied. Boundaries disappear when young minds connect. You knew that all along, didn't you? That's why you walked into that fortress with nothing but a backpack full of picture books. She smiled. I believed in something stronger than weapons. Maternal instinct? Universal connection. Mara turned her gaze back to the stars. Even apex predators want the best for their children. Across the galaxy, in 8 different worlds, children who had once been hostages now served as bridges between cultures that had spent millennia in conflict. Their experiences in the Vrethar fortress, what the media now called the nursery incident, had transformed them into ambassadors of a new kind of diplomacy. And in the heart of the fortress moon, matriarch Ira Vreth watched her own children playing with holographic messages from their friends across the stars. The ancient predator had lived centuries believing in the law of fang and claw. Now, in her twilight years, she was learning a different kind of strength, the power of nurturing connections that transcended species boundaries. The universe was still dangerous, still filled with conflicts and power struggles. But something fundamental had shifted. A door had been opened that could never fully close again. Because one woman had walked into the apex predator's den alone, and shown that even the fiercest hunters could be transformed by the universal instinct to protect the young. As the galactic conquered, entered a new era of cooperation. The story of Mara Delson and the Vrethar children became legend, a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from domination, but from connection, not from fear, but from love, not from weapons, but from understanding. And it had all begun with a simple declaration: "I've come to visit the children." The fortress moon continued its orbit, its spires still dark against the stars. But now, lights glowed warmly from within, and laughter, from many species, echoed through its ancient halls. The predators remained predators, but they had discovered a new way of being strong, not by consuming, but by protecting, not by conquering, but by nurturing. The galaxy watched and learned. And somewhere, in a classroom on a distant world, a young Vrethar child shared their lunch with a Terran classmate, and neither thought it strange at all. When asked years later about her legendary mission, Mara Delson would simply smile and say, "I just reminded them of what they already knew, that caring for the young is the most sacred instinct in the universe. Even apex predators can't resist it." And she was right. Even as the Vrethar maintained their fearsome reputation and formidable defenses, they had become champions of interspecies education and cultural exchange. Their fortress, once a symbol of terror, had transformed into a beacon of a different kind of strength. The predator's den had become a nursery, and the galaxy was better for it. At the 10th anniversary celebration of the nursery incident, now a galactic holiday promoting cultural understanding, the now elderly matriarch Ira Vreth addressed the council. Her once silver scales had faded to white, but her presence remained commanding. 10 cycles ago, I believed strength meant domination, she rumbled, her translator conveying the complex harmonics of her speech. A small human taught me otherwise. True strength is nurturing the future. True power is protecting, not consuming. She gestured to where her grandchildren, the original Vrethar youths who had been part of the incident, now stood as young adults, many pursuing careers in diplomatic service. "We remain predators," the matriarch concluded, "but we choose what we hunt, and we choose to hunt ignorance, prejudice, and fear. We choose to protect understanding, connection, and growth." As applause filled the chamber, Mara caught the eye of Commander Korsul, now aged but still proud in his Xerian military uniform. He nodded slightly, a gesture of respect that spoke volumes from a warrior who had once dismissed her approach. Later, at the reception, Ariella Nant approached her. "You changed everything," the Alteran said quietly. "With no weapons, no army, just understanding," Mara finished, "and faith in universal constants." "You mean maternal instinct?" "I mean connection," Mara replied, watching as children from dozens of species played together in the council gardens. "The understanding that we are stronger together than apart." The Vrethar fortress moon still orbited its planet, still bristled with defenses. Some habits die hard, especially for apex predators. But now, those defenses protected something different. Not just Rethar interests, but a vision of a connected galaxy, where differences were celebrated rather than feared. And it had all begun because one woman had walked into the predator's den alone, armed with nothing but picture books, snacks, and an unshakable belief in the power of nurturing the young. As the celebration continued around her, Mara smiled. The universe was vast and often dangerous. But some truths transcended evolutionary history: the desire to protect the young, the power of connection, and the strength found not in domination, but in nurturing growth. The predators remained predators, but they had found a new way to be strong. And the galaxy was transformed.